Hello and welcome to Midweek Mingle. I'm your host, Corinne, and Midweek Mingle is where I sit down with scientists, academics, researchers, and we just chat about what they're doing, who they are, and just to get to know the person behind the science. Today I have the immense honor of having Dr. Yu with me, and Dr. Ute. Dr. Ute is actually one of my lecturers. She is my clinical and counselling psychology lecturer. For those of you who know Ute, you will know that she is an extremely gentle, kind-hearted, caring, brilliant psychologist. She's obviously a doctor in psychology, and she's just recently started her brand new platform, which we'll get to by the end. But now I would just like to say hello, Dr. Yu. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so honored. Just start off by telling us who you are and what you do.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It is, I think, yeah, you said it's an honor. Yes, on the other side of the computer, it's also an honor. It's a big honor to be here. Can I just start with something maybe totally random?
Yes.
It's still so very new to me when somebody says, "Hello, Dr. Ute." So the doctor title is still something that is who is the person actually talking to me. The reason why I say this is I'm really a late academic, right? It's not that I come from an academic family, and when I was little, I'm quite dyslexic. All of my poor students know, and administration knows as well, and they are really great because they help that everything that goes out doesn't look as awful as it goes in from my side. But when I grew up, right, dyslexia was kind of the exit route, so you couldn't get into academia, at least not where I grew up. I grew up in Bavaria, which is the southern part of Germany. And being able at a really late stage in my life to access academia, to access an area where I always thought learning and thinking and making two connections is the environment, is for me still so very precious. So every time somebody says, "Hello, Dr. Ute," I'm like, "Oh, it's actually me." So I hope you allowed me to randomness of thought coming in here.
I think it gives quite a lot of background about who you are and how you view life as well, in that sort of sense of just non-belief, because you have really you've had such a, like we like to say, a wobbly path to into academia. I mean, you what did you do before you studied?
So Germany has a very strong system of training on the job, right? The apprenticeship system. So I trained as a hotel manager, so which is a very glorious training. So the first 6 months you clean toilets, the next 6 months you do carrots, and then I was able to go into service, which meant going into a beautiful restaurant. I had a brilliant time, don't get me wrong. It was a really interesting time. I learned so much. I learned respect. I learned serving. I learned service above myself, which much later I discovered this not being a vision of the hotel industry, but of Rotary. But what the hotel industry really helped me to do is I was able to leave Germany. I lived in Spain. I lived in Texas. I worked in the UK. And I worked in South Africa as a very young woman in a time when everyone told me, "Look, you are a female in hotel industry. You could be a waitress working outside Europe. Definitely not. In a higher position, no go." And being able to go to South Africa, which was a long-standing dream of mine, especially in a time where Mandela was freed. Where Bishop Tutu just happened to hang out in Cape Town, allow me to say it like this, right? So I could just hear him and on a Sunday, or walking through the park, you could just listen to the change in the country. I mean, retrospectively, I'm overwhelmed by how much I saw. At that time, of course, I lived in the time, so it was, well, that's how it is. It also taught me something about titles, funnily enough. We had this wonderful man in the hotel I worked with, and he introduced himself to me as Papa Banda, and he was the spokesperson for the employees of the hotel.
So,
And
for those of our viewers who don't know, in South Africa, I'm South African. Papa and Mama is generally sort of like king and queen. It's some of the highest honor you can get as a person, especially from non-family members. And so he was really high up if he was called Papa Banda.
And I say 6 months because that's how long it took him to talk to me. He would not approach me. He would not talk to me. I wasn't able to approach him. And after these 6 months, I never forget this. This was an evening. I worked really late, worked long hours, long hours. And he came to me and he gave me the title of Mama Ute. Again, being very young, I was not aware of the honor in such a way as I am today. But for me, having this experience in my life, being given a title out of who I am, how somebody for whom I come from such a strange background kind of goes into a country just to get work experience, giving me such a title, what an honor. And I still have this in my CV. When somebody asks me what are the greatest achievements in your life, I'd say this is one of my first achievements in my life, that I was given that title.
So how did you get from working your way up into that sort of industry, into academia? Where was that step? What was it where did that passion come from? Because now all I can see is psychologist, and so it's just interesting to hear how you got to that part.
Yeah. I came back to Germany, and I left hotel industry, and I read a newspaper article about how children learn best within the first 3 years a second language. And when I mean best, I mean on a more natural way. And there was a couple of things around the phonemes and pruning of the brain. All of that for me was really a world I didn't understand. What I understood, however, was the process of, if you are working consistently, if you are giving a child enough playfulness, they will engage in learning. And this is how I started a private educational institute together with a company which is called Helen Duron, who provided me with the training. And I started with 5 children, right? There were 5 children who said, we're going to learn English with you. And their parents, of course, because these 5 children were about 12 months old.
Oh, that's wonderful. A wonderful experience.
So within a couple of years, I had built a couple of learning centers. I oversaw a team of 25 teachers. I myself taught over 100 children every week. The youngest 12 months old, the oldest 17 years old. And I did this for 10 years. And many of these kids stayed with me for 10 years, right? So something really interesting happened. I connected with the children in the way I taught them. And they were bright and brilliant. I very quickly was called the person who can work with, in vertical commas, difficult children. So I got children today, I would say, hyperactive. I got children today, I would say, possibly are on the spectrum.
This is the spectrum of autism. Autism spectrum, yes.
Yes. But at that time, there were kids, right? And parents came to me and said, look, we heard about you. would you, and this is my child. Yeah. What I realized once the children entered education, something really strange happened. The trajectory I thought they would have just didn't happen. This is when I started reading what is actually childhood development. This is when I started reading books. I tried to then, by then I had I taught for 9 years. I created my own learning materials. Teaching within that environment was, so I taught English as if it was a second mother tongue. I didn't translate, which is not a problem when you teach, nouns or verbs or adjectives. But, teach the difference between two, and two, right?
Yeah.
Or there, and there.
As a non-native English speaker, I can agree. It's very difficult.
So I really started to become really creative. I started to break down concepts which are really complex into digestible steps. And this is where my dyslexia helped me, because I'm a very slow learner. I don't retain information well, which is really annoying when you have a husband like I have who reads something and then just remembers it. I can't do that. Got to read again and again. I have to break it. I have to break it down, understand it, put it together, and then I'm good to go, right? Then you can throw whatever you want to throw at me because I've looked at it from different angles.
But that also gives you such a deeper understanding, that taking a concept, deconstructing it, and almost building it back so you understand it. And they say you can't teach something that you don't fully understand, right?
Yeah, fully. I mean, you know how hot I am on words. We could have a discussion around the fully, but at least let's say good enough, right?
Yeah.
Bring a good old Mr. Winnicott back into and say, yeah, good enough. And I loved my job in Germany. I really enjoyed supporting children. When people ask me, what is your job? I said, I'm a bus driver. And they were, what? I said, well, a bus driver picks people up from where they are and helps them to get to the destination where they can be.
That's such a Dr. You metaphor. I love that.
And there came a time when I had to decide, am I going to carry on? I mean, I worked 14 to 16 hours a day, very often without weekends. What am I going to do? My passion became more and more psychology. The country I lived in did not allow me to study it. It took me 2 years to take a decision, which then resulted me coming to the UK, doing a master's in creative writing, then doing a bachelor in psychology at Birkbeck.
At the same time?
After my master's, I did the bachelor. Then I went to Lambeth College and did a counseling certificate. And then I did a doctorate as a counseling psychologist.
So it's quite a wobbly road. It's quite a different road.
Yeah.
It's I think it's so nice as well to hear. I've had Brittany on last week, and the week before I had Jilly and Trudy on. And I love hearing just these wobbly, wonky paths, that everyone's on a different path. And I think it's just something I want to reiterate for someone listening, not sure if they want to get into academia because they've been on such a wobbly road, that it can happen at any time. It's no one's road is straight and narrow and straightforward.
Yeah. I think it's the box thinking, and I'm definitely a person who has box thinking. It's this even now I think, how should life look like? And I catch myself when I think these type of thoughts and have a giggle. But what it tells me when I reflect around it, how strong these type of life concepts are, right? And when you are not a person who pauses and reflects, and pausing and reflecting, this is not natural. That's a skill you got to learn and train, and it takes time.
But it's so important. It's so crucial.
Yeah.
It's really, it's something that I've over the last few weeks. I've tried to do a bit more after actually using your platform, but we'll get into that in a second. You continue, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I think this gives us that moment of pausing, and what pausing does. And I think this is very interesting because this brings time and space as the interaction here together. Pausing in time creates this moment in space where we have a choice. Yeah, because quite often when we don't pause, what we do is we automatically react. We do what we habitually have done in the past.
Yeah.
Whilst I would argue that this is a choice also, I would say this is most probably a not very conscious choice, not a choice with awareness.
Yes.
So what that pause gives us is it creates that, okay, this is what could be done, this is what could be done, this is what could be done. Which for many of us increases anxiety, because now all of a sudden what we see is the person who needs to choose is us, and the responsibility for these choices is ours too.
It's like taking yourself off automatic, auto drive, autopilot, and putting yourself back in the driver's seat, which can be incredibly scary.
Yeah.
But so
and
important.
Don't get me wrong. The autopilot is really important. I mean, if we don't have an autopilot, we would die, right? Because you would have to learn not to cross the road when a car comes every time. We don't want to do that, or we don't want to be on autopilot when it's not nurturing for us, right?
Yeah. So how do you make that distinction? How many times a day do you sit down and pause and reflect? Do you do it after a big situation, a big event has taken place? Do you often do it at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, perhaps?
So I think I'm really, really bad with having this. I get up in the morning and do my 20-minute meditation. I've noticed this doesn't really help me. So I'm the person, I get up, I go for runs twice or 3 times a week, and I do a bit of yoga. So for me in the morning, this is something I need, which helps my physicality, my physical self, to step into the day, reconnecting my brain, which is really active. I love living in my head, right? But to bring it back into the rest, I mean, into the holistic Ute. I think where for me reflection started was, if I may say that, very predominantly started was in 2014 with a cancer diagnosis. And there was this single moment where I thought it was like stepping out of my life, because the diagnosis all of a sudden created life as an entity in and of itself, something over which I have no control. This became very clear very quickly. And I think at this time I realized you have a choice. You have a choice in this moment to be devastated, and you have a choice in this moment to see something that is beautiful. So what I noticed over time was, whilst it's devastating and difficult, there were also moments when I thought, oh wow, quite a long time that I've really paid attention to. For me, it was a sunset at this time. Now, let me just be very clear. I'm not one of these people who says everything bad that happens in your life happens out of a good reason, right? Or no, I call them unicorns. I don't do that, right? Because suffering is in our lives and it's difficult.
But suffering's also important. I mean, you can't always have sunshine and roses. You won't have anything to reflect on. You won't grow as a person.
Yeah.
You won't move forward, and you would actually just, the good would turn into bad if there were no bad.
Yeah. And I think, what it can teach us, that despair and joy are not mutually exclusive concepts, right? I can see the beauty of something whilst grieving for a lost one. And that's okay. This is what I have experienced in my life, and this is what I am building in my life. It's also interesting, I do quite a big amount of clinical work, how much this connects with people who are really sitting in a dark hole, where the idea is I need to change everything before I can engage in joy again. And these are thoughts I'm really questioning. Is there really not a second of joy right now here? Can we find it together? Reconnecting with the fluidity of life rather than the boxes, this or that. Can it be this and that?
So it's one of those things that you hear and you almost need a bit of processing time to sort of think about it and realize, well, yeah, life is really fluid. You can't just have this or this. There's always going to be a mixture of everything.
Yeah.
And
yeah, embracing the mixture is equals embracing the ambiguity, right? Again, and that's what makes us choke from time to time, because we don't really know.
yeah, incredible. And so you went through this really, really difficult time. You learned to reflect and look back. And what was it that encouraged you? You were a teacher before, but what was it that encouraged you to lecture, and to end up helping so many students now?
The reason why I want to lecture is because, and this sounds really not modest now, and it's actually difficult to say. I want to inspire a generation I can touch to be good in what they are doing. Yeah.
And passionate.
Yeah. Again, I've got a bit of a problem with the word passionate, because I was told suicide bombers are very passionate people. So this is why I have the problem with the word passionate. Because sometimes the passion allows us not to think reflectively any longer, because we are so gung-ho. That's why whilst people tell me I'm passionate, I always hope that I'm also very critical towards myself, my thinking, my movements, right?
It's again that fluidity that you need in life.
Yeah.
The balance.
Yeah. And I think what I can bring to my student is a transparency, is to say, look guys, this is how I think, this is why I think this, and I invite you to go with me on a journey. And you don't have to, but this is the invitation I am giving you. And that's basically it. By answering questions and bringing that what I have lived as a person in a private life, as a person in a professional life, within the proper boundaries, to the next generation of psychologists.
So I want to link back to what you previously said about Mama Ute. And like I previously said, Ute is my lecturer. She lectures me on clinical and counselling psychology. And I think it's such a fitting name. I mean, you show up 15 minutes early before the lectures to do breathing exercises, which is also something we did before the session today, which was absolutely wonderful. And it was that sort of really just care for students that made you realize that, well, students aren't very resilient and there is a problem with that. And so was it that you noticed that, and what were your thought processes behind that noticing of that?
For me, neither preaching nor teaching creates behavioral change. For me, it's modeling. It's doing what you say as much as you can, right? And I think the problem we have in psychology is accessibility, number one. And it's, look, nobody wants to meet me. Nobody wants to meet a gynecologist or a proctologist or a dentist, and you also don't want to meet your psychologist, right? So for me, it's about access. How can I give access to people to the knowledge I have? I studied for 10 years. I mean, something must be in my brain, right? I have a lot of clients and the feedback is good. So something I do must be of help. And this is when I started to think about, and it happened last year at lockdown. Because when lockdown came, my first thought was, this is going to be a problem. Anxiety levels are going to go through the roof. So I very quickly emailed my member of parliament and I said, look, this is who I am. I live in your constituency. Would you like me to I'm happy to offer some time for free. These are the time slots I have. How can I help? This is my expertise, blah. So I sent 2 emails last year. I still wait for an answer. And I thought, okay, so there are 2 ways to do that. And I'm not a big friend of binaries, but for me, there were 2 ways to do that. Either I leave it or I do my own thing. And people who know me, when I think something is important, I do my own thing. And that's how Withstow came about. So the platform that is called Withstand the Storm, because I thought, how can I connect with people at their time, yeah, so that they see who I am, that they can get concepts of psychology, which sometimes are so complicatedly presented into small digestible bites. How can I bring my knowledge of how do we implement change? We know that, we have research data. How can I create sustainability? We know that, we've got research data, right? How can I help people to see anxiety differently so it's not depleting any longer? We know that, we've got research data, right? How can I bring this to people in an effective, professional, friendly, and safe way? And that's how it came about.
So Withstow is a platform online that my perspective of it is sort of, I feel like the best cure is prevention. And I think this is where this platform comes in. It's building resilience, giving you the skills so that you don't have to end up in a psychologist office in the midst of a breakdown. It's giving you those tools to build up yourself. And like we previously said, almost taking you off autopilot for a bit and putting you in the driving seat and going, well, look, I'm taking responsibility for myself and for my life and for my mental health. And it is so important. As much as responsibility is important for anything else, you need to be responsible for your own mental health. And what I really find incredible is what I thought was, you know how they say 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this, but you think, why would a dentist recommend them? They just want to make money and want me to go back to their office. I really think that this comes from such a pure place of really just wanting to help people. And it's an incredible platform. So you came up with this idea, and what did you do? Who did you approach?
So I approached 3 people. The first 2 people I approached were my supervisors. So one was my clinical supervisor, as Dr. Lorraine Maher-Edwards, and she supervised me, I think, for nearly 2.5 years in a chronic pain service. So there we worked, of course, with chronic pain, but we worked with survivors of torture, a lot trauma, fibromyalgia, interesting long-term COVID, yeah, people that are coming in now. What we see in that cohort of people are symptoms which seem to link to the symptoms of fibromyalgia. So the course we are now doing for Withstow is around long-term COVID.
Oh.
And
What
I've
was
asked.
your Sorry, what was your
No, no.
main research based on at that point in time?
So my research is based around acceptance of chronic pain, so chronic suffering, in people who disengage with acceptance-based therapy.
So
So
to
I work
sort of
with the dropouts.
yeah, so to put
Just
it
to be very clear,
in
I work with the dropouts.
the
Yeah,
dropouts, and you were telling me about this the other day, and you were saying like you were so interested in just why these people were dropping out, and it makes so
yeah,
much sense. You would think that, and I say this, but how many things have I not gotten help for if I know I need it? But it's such a weird human trait that we don't always use or accept the help even when we know we need it. And
yeah,
so you were studying these dropouts, and sorry, continue.
yeah. And so I went to Lorraine and I said, look, this is my idea. And after working with me for such a long time, I mean, she knows me, right? And lovingly calls me weird, which I think is really great because it gives me a box I'm quite okay with. And she was on board very quickly, and I said, look, I have a company. They are building kind of the back end, right? So the what I lovingly call this binary coding stuff, which I mean you can hear it. I'm not a coder, right? They are very engaged with the idea because they see the potential in it. Would you like to come on board? And she said, yes. The second person I approached was my academic supervisor. And this is Dr. Russell Ailing. And again, working with me on my thesis for 2 years. He knew me, right? Apparently, we had a very loud discussion in a beer garden once about my thesis, and it apparently was that way that other people were ducking under the table whilst we had a really good time discussing. And again, I said to Russell, look, this is what I'm doing. And he said, that's a great idea. Come on board. And
I think it's so incredible to link back to our previous 2 sessions that we had, and also the SOFA network. So for those of you who are new, the SOFA network is a network of women, and it's an acronym for Supporting Outstanding Female Academics and Researchers. And Ute is on that network with me, and our focus is mentorship, really. And we've been speaking a lot about the importance of mentorship and having people to turn to with your ideas, and people you can trust, and people who will guide you and be really critically honest with you. And I think it's so incredible to hear this journey. And every psychologist I really speak to, or academic, has had some sort of mentor for them there. And it would just be nice to hear your views on as well on the importance of mentorship. Sort of slide that in there.
Absolutely. Allow me to say this maybe with the third member, and this is Dr. Saika Iqbal, who came on board as a positive psychologist, right? Somebody who is not a HCPC accredited practitioner as Lorraine and Russell are, but who comes more from the academic university side. And what Withstow does is we take good people on board who know what they are doing, right?
Could you give us a little bit of background behind positive psychology? I think it's quite it's a little bit of like a niche almost. You don't hear a lot about positive psychology.
Yeah, so I think what we do in what clinical psychologists does and do, and what we counseling psychologists do, we work with what has gone wrong. And positive psychology looks more at what are your strengths. Yeah, can we build your strength? And by building your strength, will you then be more able to work with challenges? So it is as if they would come from the other side, right? I mean, it's interesting that positive psychology based on Seligman, of course, huge research around learned helplessness, which links to depression as a concept, has kind of flipped and has gone, look, why do we do always the research around the negative or the challenges? Why don't we start researching where our strength lies? And I mean, for the Western world, a totally strange concept, because what we do, where we put the money in, is in what goes wrong.
Yeah.
Where we don't put the research money in is what actually works, right? What is works is most probably the wrong way to express it, but where are the strengths in the person and how can I foster these strengths? And this is actually what links to resilience. Because when you think about resilience, it is not what many people say toughness, this I can go through life like this, throw at me what you want, right? I'm kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator in persona.
Walking away from the bomb site with no scars.
And no scar. And and that's what people tell me resilience is. It's actually, that's how it's taught quite often in organizations. But if you look at the etiology of the word, when you look at the history of the world, it comes from mechanical engineering. So they take this metal sheet, they put it between two hands, and they bump a weight on it. So then the metal sheet, of course, bends. Resilience is measured in the way it jumps back.
Oh.
And that's what resilience is.
Oh.
So this teaches us various things. Firstly, we need to have a challenge in order to develop resilience. No challenge, how are you going to train it?
You can't bounce back from if there's no dip. Oh.
Secondly, it tells you bouncing back. It does not tell you being oblivious to suffering. Yeah?
Yes.
And that is, although it sounds so, of course this is how it is, Ute. It is such a huge difference. Because how many of us say, I'm not going to, my heart was broken, I'm not going to fall in love ever again. Yeah?
No, definitely. And it can be anything, really, that resilience of that bouncing back. I mean, sometimes it's, life comes at you from all angles. You might be a metal sheet and you just get bombarded with this pressure. And so it's interesting to think about it as a way of, my resilience is not how far I can be bent before I break, but actually after I've been bent, how far do I bounce back?
How to bounce back. Yeah.
And that is really linked to that positive psychology, because to be able to bounce back, you need to know your strengths. You can't bounce on, if you've got a good leg and a bad leg. If you want to get somewhere, you're going to use your good leg, and so it makes sense.
Yeah.
So you approached Saika.
Yeah.
And she is the third partner in Withstow.
So she's the third founding member, and now slowly more people are coming on board. Mentorship comes in for me in what we are doing here is something really new in psychology, right? We are creating courses, small bite-sized videos, handbooks or MP3s, MP4s. It's created by psychologists. It is professionally filmed, and the person who sits in the film is the psychologist. Hugely anxiety-provoking for many of my colleagues, right? Yeah. So now I can help, I can mentor people who have mentored me in the past to engage in a new way of my husband calls it psychologizing. Psychologizing people.
I love that.
Yeah, so he says it's psychologizing, but bringing psychology to the people. And you know, if you have been working in a particular way for a long time, then of course it is difficult to say, I'm going to sit in front of a camera light, 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 right? I've got 20 minutes and then it's got to be a wrap. That's different environment.
And there's no facial expression. There's none of that. Even when you're lecturing, you get some feedback while lecturing in person. You get facial expressions. You get to see what the other person feels by their body language. And I think it is incredible. People always think, and I've had people say this to me as well. Well, you study psychology. You're a psychologist. There's no need. You don't get anxiety. You don't get depressed. Psychologists are just the epitome of mental health. And it is good to just take a step back and think, well, yes, everyone gets stressed. Everyone gets anxieties, and it's how you deal with it. And that's so incredible that you can now turn around and mentor someone who's mentored you. And that's what we were talking about with the SOFA network as well. It's that path you walk with your fellow academics or researchers. It's the path you walk together, and it's sort of like a hand-holding path. You're not dragging each other along. Sometimes maybe a little bit of a push, but it's really, yeah.
Vista also gives us the chance, and I say us because that's an idea the four of us developed. And once the trial is over, we are in the trial phase. So Birkbeck has this tailored course for the students, which is all around resilience. And once the trial phase is over, the next step I want to do is I want to open Wisto. There is a part for blocks and vlogs. I want to open this for students, right? To say, guys, an essay competition, for example, around a topic, and you can then come with your essay onto the platform, and we will then promote what you have written, for example, via social media.
Is this platform is right now it's in sort of its beta phase, and it is focusing on students, but this platform is also for any person who, there's so many different courses on there, and there's going to be, and this platform is really for anybody who wants to build the skills so that you don't have that mental breakdown in a few months. It's like almost like physio training, strengthening your mind and your brain, so that your resilience is better, because you bounce back because you've been practicing. So sorry, I just wanted to mention, I'm sure there's people listening who will be very interested in joining the platform. So what I'll do is I'll put the link in the description below afterwards. And
we break it down. I mean, we are building the courses at the moment. So there are either an editing, or we have a 5-day filming. We have the filming crew down. We're going to film at the end of April. It's going to be nine new courses that are filmed. I just finished a course which is around conflict resolution and conflict resolution skills. We have course on sleep, on anxiety, on detaching from unhelpful thoughts. We have one course which is around how many self-help books have you got and how many have you actually read.
I feel a bit ashamed about that one. If I look at my book collection, I think, oh dear, what do I have, about 6?
Yeah. So and the idea is we literally, we have kind of 3 different, we have special courses for organization, like for Birkbeck. We hope, of course, that Birkbeck is going to take it on after the trial for the whole of the university, even adding courses, and adding courses which are specific to the Birkbeck community, that we can go into organization and give them access as well. So I work in a hospice. The hospice is now switching on to Wisto from the end of this year on. But what we are doing, we are creating a subscription, where people have one course a month that comes online and they can just use it. And that's a subscription which, it's around £70 a year. So
And if you
that's
think about it, it's psychology fees. I know we're in the UK, both in the UK, and we spoke about this briefly previously when we were on the phone, and we were saying, I mean, I've been waiting 6 months to see a psychologist on the NHS, and it's another thing people say. Well, just turn to one of your colleagues. It's just like, no, you can't. You need that
it's not
support.
boundary. Yeah,
And
yeah,
it is so difficult to get that support, and there might be listeners from other countries who don't have an NHS or a health
yeah.
fund, and it's really expensive to go to a psychologist, and as well to find the time to go and sit down and go somewhere and drive there or take the train
Yeah.
and go back home. I think this is so wonderful. It's such a thing of convenience almost. It's a bit
Right. I
like
mean,
home cooked fast food.
nobody listens, right? So how I can say that I want to make psychology convenient for people, right? And it sounds, I know a couple of my colleagues cringe when I say that, but allow me to come back from where I come from. I come from a place where it was too exclusive for me to be a part of. I worked for 10 years in a service industry. And this is what I want to provide with Wisto. I want to provide good service in various areas so that people can access it, right? And they can access the videos, but they can also access the people who have actually done these videos. So if you say, I really want to work with this person who created this video, this is what you can do. You can book a session with them, right? You don't have to, but you can.
As well, I think the videos, as someone who's watched them, they're very natural. They're very real. It doesn't, it's extremely high quality, and it's lovely to look at, but I don't feel like I need to be sitting in my little suit jacket, and it's not, it's a comfortable feeling. It's
Yeah,
natural. We spoke about this as well briefly, about how we both talk with our hands. So you can see
yeah,
my hands
very
all
much.
over, and it is that so natural. Just you feel like you can connect with wow, what's your resilience, and so you feel like you can connect with a psychologist, and in that sense, then if you would like to ask a question or would like more information about from the actual person who's written the course, how often do you get to have that ability to speak to someone who's created something to help you, can then book a session, and so lovely. And there's such a wide variety as well. You were speaking about the just a diversity of the platform and trying to get as much representation as possible in that platform, and I think that's
Yeah,
incredible, and that's what, not everyone can connect to everyone else in the same way. We all connect to people in different ways, and that's why it's so
absolutely.
nice that this was your idea, but you're sort of just opening it up,
Yeah,
and in that way reaching so many more people.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I now connected to the ex. I think it's is it the president for the British Psychological Society's chapters? Don't know if the title is president. With Dr. Maureen McIntosh, and she was instrumental during my doctorate that I was allowed. She gave me the opportunity to write a chapter in a book, which is called Diversity in Leadership in Psychology. And it is a book about looking at diversity. And I know the word diversity is a very contagious word. Yeah, allow me to use it still for the sake of our interview, our communication today. And it was about looking how we have to work really hard in order to create a pluralistic society, and we have to work hard for that. And I've now reconnected with Maureen, and I have said, look, this is what I do. I have a very weak network into the Asian community, into the community of color, into Black people's communities. I don't have a straight strong network. I need this network because it cannot be that yet another white middle class woman has a frontal face on such a thing. This is wrong. And you hear it most probably on my language and on the pauses I make, that it was really hard for me to do so. And it is hard for me because how do we approach? How do we talk? How do we speak? We're not very transparent about the difficulties we are having. And I think one of the hindrances to the transparency is the fear of doing wrong. Certainly in my case, I don't want to do wrong. And Maureen came back within 10 minutes and she said, look, I'm chock-a-block. I don't take on new projects. I highly recommend, please connect to these 3 people because what you're doing is really, really important. And when I read this email on that Sunday, it was such an incredible boost, and it was such a feeling of being trusted, right? And again, this goes beyond. This is the core what Withstow does. It's collaboratively in nature. It needs to bring who we are and what we do as high-class experts of psychology to people who can learn from it. We can change behavior to the better, and also allowing psychologists to have different income streams, to not be dependent always on the same system, which you and I know is difficult in and of itself.
Yeah.
And to embrace something which is just the new normal, which is the World Wide Web, right?
It's so interesting as well. The core of Withstow is that transparency that breeds trust, and that is what it is, and that is what I said earlier. And is that trusting feeling is because it is so transparent. You're not afraid to talk about your flaws, and in that way, some way, it almost brings your successes up higher. And it's that honesty that's so beautiful.
I mean, I was very blessed because creating these videos. Look, I'm not a video maker. If you watch my YouTubes, you're gonna cringe. I mean, that's how bad they are, right? And I've got these 2 really wonderful friends, and they have a theater company, the Big Tiny, and they write, create, produce British panto up in the north. So my husband and I, since they go on stage, we drive up there every year to watch their panto because it's just brilliant. And I said, I don't know what to do with the filming. I don't get it right. Whatever I try, everything goes wrong. And they said, why don't we do it? So there are these 2 brilliant creative heads, actor, writer, producer, who pack their filming equipment in their van and to travel down and sit down with me and say, what do you want, Ute? And I said, I want something that is highly professional, but not sleek. I want people to see, I've got a nervous tick. My English is good. Is it flawless? Oh my goodness, far away from it. I get red cheeks when I talk. That's who I am. I want people to connect with the essence of the psychologist, whilst also oozing the professionality we are having. Yeah. And don't ask me why, how, but they translated it. And it was fun, right? I mean, I never forget we did the sleeping, this, most probably telling me off when I say that, but we did this sleeping course. And there are a couple of exercises on sleep. So there are these two guys, right, who are really critical, fast asleep. I do this 30-minute relaxation exercise around sleep. And I was totally freaked out. And they just said, seems to work.
Oh my god. It is. It's incredible. I think this platform has so much potential, and there are so many different places it can go. And what I sort of see is businesses taking this on for their employees and supporting them in this way, because businesses are always saying that they want to do something to improve their employees' mental health, and this is the perfect platform for that. It is giving them the power, and it's that convenience as well of doing it whenever you have time, whenever you can fit it into your schedule. You don't have to fit your schedule in around therapy now. You can fit therapy into your schedule. And that almost takes that anxiety away. I don't know. I think for a lot of people, for me, scheduling is a bigger headache. I get so anxious when I need to schedule things. And now it's like, when I have a chance, I'm going to plan this in. And it doesn't have to be a massive block of time.
No, that's why we say, okay, I mean, we produce between 9 minutes and 15 minutes. That's the max of videos. Because I'm very selfish now. You send me a training video which says 20 minutes.
Oh. Well, Dr. Ute, it's been so lovely to have you here. There's no questions in the live chat. Is there anything else that you would want to say, you would want to add on?
I think what so far is bringing into my life, if I may say that, is that it doesn't matter where we are, right? It doesn't matter who we are. And trust me, guys, I just want to say that when I went to the first SOFA meeting, my immediate reaction was to stop the Zoom, to end the meeting, because the women that are in there are just incredible, right? I mean, incredible. And my first impression was, what the heck do I do in this group of incredible people? I think what SOFA teaches me today, where I am right now, let's look at the different skill sets we have. And these different skill sets, if I give them to somebody else, if I invite somebody else to see them, this is how we can empower each other. Immediately this takes away hierarchy and replaces it with collaboration, which for me is, as I already said, key.
I think it is really lovely. We spoke about the first meeting as well briefly. And it's interesting how we spoke about imposter syndrome quite a bit the other day. And for those of you who don't know, imposter syndrome is... Okay, so we just got a question, but imposter syndrome is basically when you feel like an imposter. You can have all the qualifications and do everything right, and you still feel like an imposter. And this is one thing that academics, researchers, people in this community doesn't talk about, and we all feel it. And so it was interesting to speak to different members after the first SOFA event, and everyone sort of had the same imposter syndrome feeling. And we were saying as well, it's incredible that something we all experience, no one really speaks about. And I mean, it was such a lovely event. There were so many fantastic women, and we're really excited to open the SOFA network up, and we'll let the public know a bit more about our members and what they're doing and what's happening. We had a question. Says, so many undergrad students want to be clinical and or counselling psychologists. What is the best piece of advice you could give them? I think that's an incredible question.
This takes me back to, I'm a very direct person, and many of my clients call me Bootcamp Ute.
I can imagine that.
wanting is not enough. I have spoken to so many undergrads who come to me and say, but I really want it. It's a very, very long road with a lot of setbacks. We had the panel discussion last week in the module where I had wonderful people on the panel, meaning one of them, after 5 years of applying, got on the clinical psychology doctorate. I think if you are creating a life that is only worth living when you reach the goal, then you are wasting life. If you are saying the pathway towards the doctorate is what I embrace, what I enjoy, what I don't regret, not just, a means to an end, but something I really want to do, then there is no stopping you.
I just want to reiterate what you just said. If you're only creating a life that's worth living, if you reach your goal, it's not going to be worth living. That is so incredible. It is, and this is so cliche to say, it's the journey that matters, but it really is. And in clinical, like you said, it's incredibly difficult, and it's that determination again, and that pushing through, resilience. Resilience after setbacks.
Resilience, the reflection, the transparency towards yourself and life. Transparency towards yourself, what I mean with that is the question, why do I want to? And very quickly when I say to people, why do you want to be clinical? Because it is the only paid program in the UK. Whilst I understand the answer, it's not a good enough reason. Yeah. So people who want to do that, think about how the journey could look like, and the pathway towards it. Dare I even say must be something you still enjoy waking up in the morning. The values of your life. Let me say it differently. I think the heartfelt purpose of why you want to live the life you are living it must be in every day. Because, it's not going to be the first application that goes through. It's not going to be the second or the third one, right? It might be the fifth one, as that wonderful trainee Ron spoke to us about. These were 5 years of his life. And what he said, in these 5 years, I had a great life. I did wonderful work. He worked clinically already at that time. I learned, I studied, I engaged with people I wanted to engage with. This counts. So whilst I'm a very goal-driven person, just to be very clear, whilst the goal is important, breaking the goal down and having the drive of your heartfelt purpose, I think this is important for the undergrads, knowing your heartfelt purpose.
This is something I just thought about. I wanted to ask you, what would be your best advice for mentoring someone and for being mentored?
So mentoring someone, allow me to, may I rephrase this a little bit? Who would I mentor? Who would I mentor, right? Again, it would come down to how driven the person is towards something. Yeah. These are the people I enjoy the most to mentor, is the openness towards the new, the area of development, scary, but let's look anyway, right?
Let's jump.
yeah, Kierkegaard, right? Being able to do this leap of faith, not knowing where it's gonna go, yet being open to it. These are the people I really enjoy to mentor. Personally, how I would want to be mentored is people who are really stepping out of who are observing me and say, look at this, look at this, look at this. How does it connect? Where else could you connect this to? How can you connect it back to your strength? Yeah.
Sort of taking that like aerial view of a problem, because it's so difficult to see when you're inside it. Sometimes having that bird's eye view, that's such an incredible way to think of it.
Yeah. And that's why I think mentoring, whilst it is wonderful to have mentoring within your community, yeah, I also I would really say to people, don't shy back to be mentored by somebody who is outside your profession. This might not be bad at all. It gives you a different network, fair enough. What it can give you is also the view around your personal structures, your habits, your way of thinking, right? Yeah, I think that would be or these are my thoughts around mentoring or being a mentee.
I think as well, when people hear mentoring, they almost have this teacher student
Yeah.
perspective, and that's definitely what I had before I sort of read more into it and asked more opinions. And it isn't really that, is it? It's not that hierarchical. That's my English.
Just
Um,
saying that you are the mother tongue here. I just wanted to say that. That
and
was so mean.
it is like, once again, it's fluid. It's a relationship. It's supporting each other, and like you said, you can mentor someone who's been mentoring you, and it's incredible. It's positive psychology, focusing on your strengths.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Dr. Yu, it has been so lovely to speak to you today. It's been
Thank
absolutely
you.
incredible. Thank you so much for coming. Our viewers have really enjoyed it as well. I can see the live chat. I am so excited as well. Next week I've got Dr. Ameline Bardot. So please like and subscribe so you don't miss out. And we will be here every week Wednesday. So make sure to join in. And next week, we will also have some new art to show you. So we're changing our logo. So don't be so surprised.
Woo!
We have some people in the comments saying thank you so much, Ute. Really interesting. And thank you. They said thank you for the mention. It's called the Big Tie. um, Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Once again, this was Midweek Mingle. I'm your host, Corinne, and I was here with Dr. Ute today. So I'll just say goodbye and thank you so much.
Thank you, Karin. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Can you hear my husband in the back? Well done. Great job.